Fish Stripes Live underway, previewing another Miami Marlins series. It's Eli Sussman here with Kevin Barral, Fish Stripes. Looking forward to this 4-game set, a very rare 4-game series that the Marlins play, and hosting it here at Lone Depot Park. It feels like a holiday because every time these teams meet, the Marlins have been having their way over the past couple of years against the Phillies. And things are lining up again pretty favorably for the Marlins again, aren't they, Kevin?
Yeah, they won 2 out of 3 on the last series. And once again, this is a pretty important series. It means a lot for the standings of where the Marlins are at right now, which they're fourth. If they take at least 3 out of the 4, they would be in first place. If all the other teams, it doesn't go well for the Mets and the Phillies and the Phillies obviously, but the Braves.
Yeah, this whole division is just clumped all together. I mean, it was only a few days ago that the Mets were on top, and now, I mean, they're dealing with more injuries than anybody else, so you can't trust that to keep up all that much longer. They got some news today that some of their key players are going to be out longer than expected. There's nobody in this division to be afraid of at the moment. And the Marlins, people have loved to point to this throughout the year. Almost the entire year, the Marlins have had the best run differential in the division. So that's like an indication that you strip away the luck that happens in small samples. You just look at how many runs they score versus how many they allow, and this team is arguably as good as any of the other teams in the division. So very encouraging, all things considered, start to the season at this point. The main news we want to start off with, I guess, is the transaction right before the game, Jorge Alfaro being reinstated from the injured list. I mean, we've been without him since April 20th, April 18th. It's been more than a month without Jorge Alfaro. He had a little bit of a setback with some soreness in his side, but the original injury, a hamstring injury. What does it mean to have Alfaro back? I recorded a whole podcast kind of on this morning, so I want to let you focus more on it for the stream. What you're expecting of Alfaro, because he got off to a relatively slow start to the season, but do you think that he is a significant upgrade over what they had with Chad Wallach?
Oh, over Chad Wallach, yeah. That's for sure. I mean, I think over both catchers, the good thing about Alfaro is he's a great defensive catcher when it comes to throwing players out, controlling that ball. And then you have the part where he's offensively. He's a pretty good batter when he bats and when he's on a rhythm. This season, again, slow start. I'm expecting Alfaro to for sure be on a tight leash here. When he does come back, they'll give him his time to get into shape again, get him in the baseball form with the MLB form, because we already saw him in the rehab games. Alfaro just has to stay on rhythm. If he stays on rhythm, does what he did right before he got injured, which he was heating up, Alfaro should be on this team not past the trade deadline for sure. And I mean, he's on a tight leash, as I said, because Miami's trying to make trades. They're trying to win. They're trying to make the playoffs. They have a huge chance to take over this division with the series against Philadelphia. Alfaro just has to stay consistent, and we're expecting big things from him for sure. Just to be consistent on defense and offense as well.
Consistency has been kind of the issue of his whole career, honestly. And there were times in 2019 where I remember the excitement very early on, right after they made the trade with Real Muto, how he was off to a better start than JT was during those first few weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Towards the end of 2019, he was red hot again, but pretty much everything in between then was inconsistent. And we've known that since 2020, it's a smaller sample, but the portion of the last 2 seasons, he just hasn't played well. He's been bad. Like he has the same strikeout issues we've seen, some of the same defensive inconsistency where he has that strong arm, but you kind of question everything else that comes with that skill set. And he hasn't hit for enough power to kind of make up for those other weaknesses. An interesting decision today to reinstate him from the injured list. He's fully healthy. He had a day off on Sunday, traveling back to join the team. So he's rested, but yet not in the starting lineup. And we were talking about this right before going on air, explaining to the people why Alfaro is back, but not in this lineup for the series opener.
Yeah, ever since Trevor Rogers has been on this hot streak, his first catcher when he made his MLB Marlins debut of the season, it was Sandy Leon. And that's who it's been from ever since. There's the new thing called the personal catcher. See with pitchers, for example, like Garrett Cole with Kyle Higashioka. Then you have Victor Caratini and Yu Darvish. In this case, it's Trevor Rogers and Sandy Leon. That's the guy who Rogers feels most comfortable with, and that's the one who pretty much that's the catcher who got him that NL Rookie of the Month, and most likely will get him the NL Rookie of the NL Rookie of the Year. So Sandy Leon is his personal guy. We see it. I mean, you saw it with the Yankees. We see it with the Padres. I'm not sure if there's any other teams right now that do this, but this is something I think that's helpful for Rogers just to stay with one guy, work with that one guy, which in this case it would be Sandy Leon. That's why Wallach was brought down, and it wasn't Leon, because Leon initially started the season off in the fish tank in the alternate training site, and he's up now, and Wallach is down. So that says a lot about how Rogers feels with Leon over any other catcher right now that the Marlins have brought in.
Yeah, well, I'll go into that a little bit more in a moment. You did mention the pairing of this guy. That's a bold comparison to make it with Trevor Rogers, Garrett Cole, and Yu Darvish.
Well,
but it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
He is performing at that level, though. I mean, it is. I don't blame you for that at all. Yeah, he is on that tier of performance so far. We had high expectations coming out of spring training for Trevor, but he's blown past all of those. He has been on the short list of best pitchers in baseball to this point of the season. He's been the most successful pitcher in this rotation, even though Pablo's been great and Sandy, for the most part, has been great. And yet Trevor is on that higher level and got to stick with what's working. Just to give you some stats, 9 starts so far, 6 of those with Sandy Leon, a 1.47 ERA when Sandy is behind the plate. And he's pretty good with other guys too, but that's even at a higher level. Only 2 home runs allowed in 36 and 2/3 innings pitch. If you're not allowing home runs, you're generally going to be very, very successful in this day and age. And so that's been the key. He rarely makes mistakes with Sandy Leon behind the plate. And when he does make mistakes, they're just not getting hurt. So overall, just almost every single outing paired up with Sandy Leon has been a quality start, if not an excellent start. And makes some sense to keep that going. It should be noted, though, that Sandy's really struggling offensively. People may remember he made his Marlins debut, and right away he got a couple hits, gave us some hope that he would fill Alfaro's shoes pretty well. But it's turned out that he's just a much different player. There's a lot of positives to his defense, but offensively he is about as an automatic out as it gets. That's just the truth. When you combine just the lack of hitting and the fact that he's so slow on base paths when he does get on base, that he's hurting the team a little bit on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I fully agree. This is just one of those situations where you have Alfaro. Alfaro makes a great sense here, where he could help you offensively and defensively when he's consistent.
Checking in from the field, from the press box, Ethan Podolsky. How's everything going up there? How's the whole experience been covering this game?
Well, the only time I had been was last year when it was empty, and so this is a lot different. There's energy before the game. It's a Monday night and it's early, so it's not the most packed house, but it feels good to be back and to have some fans and to have some energy in the park. I saw the Phillies take BP earlier, McCutcheon, so everything's getting back to normal a little bit. It's nice to be back here in the press box, and certainly an encouraging day for the Marlins in terms of, you guys were just talking about Alfaro, and I just got done writing about the injury news that the Marlins received today, and a lot of this stuff was very positive. So it's certainly an encouraging day, and Marlins coming off 2-3 against the Mets, looking to take another series against the Phillies here. So.
Well, you touched on the other injury updates. So far, we've just mainly focused on Alfaro coming back on, Chad Wallach going down. Any of those other really big updates that you think are worth mentioning on the stream, just for anybody that might have missed it?
Well, the 2 that are certainly worth mentioning are Starling Marte is starting a rehab assignment in Jacksonville tomorrow, so he'll be with the AAA club, and that is certainly huge for the Marlins. That's been a huge hole in their lineup since he went down, has been the top of the lineup, and obviously we knew how much the Marlins would miss him with the start that he got off to, and they certainly have missed him, so that's a huge development. And then the other one is Sixto Sanchez, and the fact that he's moving forward in his progression. It seemed like weeks that he was throwing at 120 feet, but now he'll throw a bullpen, which is the next step in his progression, sometime this week. The Marlins didn't give us a specific day, but I'm sure they will when that time comes, and he'll probably throw another bullpen or 2 before he moves to the next step of his progression. So we're getting a little closer with Sixto. We're still kind of far away, but that's certainly, with the way the Marlins were handling him, the fact is they're going to move slowly with him. So any step, any development is a positive one. So that's certainly a huge development for the Marlins.
That news came out at a perfect time about Sixto because I was getting really close to writing a pretty mean article about how they were handling his rehab because it was fishy.
Yeah.
It really was. The fact that he was throwing at that exact distance for 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
It felt like.
It felt like it was motivated potentially by service time manipulation, that intentionally were bringing him along so slow that he wouldn't be able to join the team until a certain point in the year. Kim Ang making the equivalency between like a trade deadline acquisition as if he won't be up until late July. It all just seemed really unnecessary unless you believe that the team is pinching pennies and the team is has other motivations instead of actually trying to be competitive right now. But we can put that to the side because he is now throwing off a mound, and so that's a big step for him, and hopefully gets him at least back in minor league games within a couple weeks, and then maybe not too far behind that when he gets called up. So yeah, good to mention that. On Starling Marte, I guess the expectation that I don't think Don Mattingly touched on this specifically, but my guess, based on the amount of time that he missed and just comparing it to other guys, is that he'll probably spend about a full week at AAA, probably play most of the games that week, and then rejoin them the following week, probably next Tuesday in Buffalo. You think that's a logical guess that June 1st is the day we might get him back?
Yeah, well, Mattingly, he didn't say what specific date or how long he would be down there for, but they're kind of taking it today. But based on that, they just want to get a feel for how he feels after swinging a bat, after playing a game, after playing center field, that kind of stuff. So once they get a feel for that, but I think that you'll most likely see him. Yeah, I think in the article that I'm working on here that it's more likely next week than this week. I don't think we'll see him back for this Phillies series or who they have in Boston. I think most likely you would see him in Buffalo for that Blue Jays series.
Yeah, that should be the first game that this year that the Blue Jays play in Buffalo after relocating from Florida. So that's going to be a wild scene going on right there. What else do we want to cover from tonight? Interesting, on our screen, he's not in the lineup tonight, but Garrett Cooper is joining us in the background on the stream. Kevin, that's an interesting decision because Cooper had his best week of the entire season this past week. He hit that walk-up home run. Overall had a streak of 3 straight games with home run. He had hits in every single game. He's doing it a lot of positives. He's hitting to all fields. He's hitting for power. And I don't think he's even made any real mistakes defensively over the last week or so. He's been playing great. He's been one of the best players, and yet sitting him tonight. So any strong feelings about that decision?
Yeah, this guy just woke up all of a sudden. I think the Sugar Kings jerseys really helped him out there. You also have, and I don't really know why they're sitting him out. I guess it's just a break for him, just give him a rest day and then come back the next day. But this guy heated up. All of a sudden, he gets a walk-off home run. He almost hit for the cycle against Philly, coincidentally. This guy's just he's been phenomenal lately, and for sure making himself a case to stay on this roster up in the big leagues.
Yeah, well, there was that time, like you say, Kevin, where people were talking about optioning and sending him down, and that's certainly gone by the wayside. That's not going to be happening anytime soon. But the thing that gets interesting is what happens when Starling Marte returns. Because the Marlins are going to have that logjam in the outfield again that we saw in the first 16 games when Starling Marte was healthy. So it gets very interesting once that happens. But for now, yeah, I mean, I understand that the Marlins are facing a righty here, and so Sierra, you want the lefty Sierra in there, and Sierra does provide great defense and base running in center field. But it's just, what are you gaining from that you're losing? Does it outweigh what you're losing at the plate in terms of going from Cooper to Sierra? Cooper's on a hot streak, but the Marlins this year, they've been rotating guys in and out. The rotation has been the thing that they've been doing. So it's not surprising, it's not anything new to see Cooper get a day. I'm not sure what the reasoning for today being that day is, but he gets a day today. You look at this lineup and it just keeps getting stronger. And then you add Duvall back in there, not Duvall. You had Marte back in there, and you had Alfaro back in there, and he's active tonight. Obviously, he's not in the lineup. Sandy Leon is catching Trevor, and that could just be Leon and Trevor have been a great pairing so far. That could just be that,
right?
Instead of
yeah.
Alfaro, yeah. but that's actually something I just thought of. But this lineup looks starting to get back towards full strength, what it was at opening day. And when you look at Cooper getting hot, Duvall playing better, Anderson playing better, Marte back, help is on the way for the Marlins, and things are certainly looking up in terms of the strength of the lineup.
Yeah, before turning the page on the catcher stuff, I wanted to get to this, as John brings up, about exactly why Wallach was options. Now, it's kind of splitting hairs in performance between Wallach and Leon. Both of them, they've struggled, to say the least. I mean, any way you look at it, the Marlins catching situation might be the worst in baseball so far this season. Both these guys struggle to hit. With Wallach, it's about simply swinging and missing all the time. With Leon, it's about how he just can't hit for any power at all, and both these guys can't run. Both of them have some holes defensively as well. They're kind of imperfect. But the reason why Wallach got sent down is, one, because he was the one that had minor league options. You can't send down Sandy Leon without his consent, and there would be no reason for him to give consent when he already has this guaranteed contract. And to be precise about his contract, he's earning $1.25 million now that he's in the majors this year. It's about twice the major league minimum. It's about twice what Chad Wallach is earning this year. And so the problem is you can't send him down. We'd have to designate him for assignment. And assuming that he would clear waivers and nobody gets him, he has enough service time that he could simply take his money and run. It's pretty crazy that even if no team wanted him, even if he passed through waivers due to his service time and due to the fact that he signed this guaranteed deal, that all that $1.25 million, he could simply go home and get paid, or he could just go to free agency and look for another team. And so for the Marlins, knowing that finances are a pretty important factor to them, they were not going to pay him to just go away or risk losing him. That if they're going to do that, they'll keep him on the major league team until his performance really gets in the way. And I think he's doing enough, working well with these pitchers, especially with Trevor, that they feel it's worth it at this point. They got some interesting decisions moving forward if he continues to OPS in the 400s. If he continues to be one of the worst hitters in baseball, then they have some tricky decisions. Brian Navarreto is off to a hot start in AAA, so they could consider a pretty big shakeup. They could go with Alfaro and Navarreto if they pass the point where Leon is really hurting the team. But in the meantime, that's kind of why he's still around, because of that money invested in him, because of all the experience that he has, that for now he's staying put. And so no big disagreement with that. If you're a little frustrated with the catcher position, then that just goes back to the offseason. I mean, we were talking about it, that they should do whatever it takes to trade for Wilson Contreras, or whatever it takes to just sign somebody in free agency to a major league deal. And they didn't do that. And I feel it's coming back to bite them a little bit. But under these circumstances, it makes sense how they maneuvered this.
Yeah, the other guy is Jacob Stallings. That's another guy that the Marlins fans have been high on in terms of trade, a possible trade. But really, also what it comes down to is I think it's just performance. I just think Leon's the better catcher. And yes, the free agency stuff is certainly a point, because you don't want to lose him and what he's done. But I just think it comes down to performance. Like you said, neither of them have really provided anything at all at the plate. But just defensively, Leon is a lot better, and he's been really good for these young pitchers. And I think that's a huge reason to keep a catcher. And he'll be a very good backup to Alfaro when Alfaro, now that Alfaro, I imagine he's going to get the bulk of the workload. So now that he's back, all of a sudden you're looking at a nice catching pairing.
At the end of the day, you want the pitcher to feel comfortable with the catcher they're throwing to, and at this moment, it was Leon for Rogers, and maybe for other pitchers in that bullpen or in that starting rotation. So I think that's also one of the big factors that led Wallach to going down to AAA. And going back to something with Cooper quickly, when Marte comes up, you guys said most likely Toronto. That would be, giving the week. That's an American League team. They're going to have the DH. So I'm expecting Cooper to stay up, especially now. When he's heating up, he's going to go to Boston. They're most likely going to make him the DH. Aguilar is going to be at first, so they'll swap it. And then you go to Toronto, you still have the DH. So most likely Cooper stays up. I'll figure a guy like Sierra goes down. Since Marte's coming up, he's going to play center field. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Well, so the tough situation with Sierra is he's also out of minor league options. They can't send him down unless he clears waivers. And so that's going to be an interesting question, not really for this series, but yeah, when we get to next week is, do they think he would get through waivers? Do they think another team would claim him and put him on their major league roster? And I'm not really sure. I mean, that's actually a very good question because of how much he struggles to hit and that obvious limitation in his game that he really doesn't give you much aside from bunts and stolen bases and great center field defense. That's going to be an interesting question that they have to address, not now, but relatively soon.
And now that I think of it, isn't Jose Devers on the roster since Isan is on the 10-day IL? So they would most likely bring down Devers and bring up Marte, right?
Well, Isan should be back because he's on the COVID IL, so he can be activated in the next 2 days. But then the interesting question becomes, what do you do with Isan? Do you drop down from 14 arms? And I think they're at 14 and 12 still, right? So yeah, I mean, the roster move becomes interesting, but what you do with Cooper in the lineup, and it's easy, like you said, Kevin, when you've got the DH, but we all know that the Marlins unfortunately don't have the DH at home this year and in the majority of the games they play. So all of a sudden the lineup crunch is back, and it becomes interesting about how Mattingly handles this lineup. And, it's a good problem to have, but also if it's been the way it's been, which is a lot of the guys have been struggling, then it's tough to find the right combination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, overall, to be fair, I think we should take note that this offense overall was not coming off a good weekend against the Mets. I mean, that Friday night loss was very frustrating. On Saturday, they just barely did enough to get by. On Sunday, they scored 5 runs, but it was the cheapest 5 runs you'll ever see. They didn't hit a home run, but they didn't hit any other extra base hit. They didn't hit any ball that was even close to being an extra. I think maybe one. Like Jesus Aguilar had this long line drive that was like, you hit it to the right spot, then it does a lot of damage. But I looked it up. It was the first time in like 7 years that they scored that many runs without having an extra base hit. So power is still a big concern because they're getting it from Cooper right now, a little bit from Brian Anderson, and that's about it. So that's been the frustrating part, is that Cooper and Anderson are both hot, and now Jazz Chisholm and Jesus Aguilar have slowed down. If they all get going at the same time, then you feel pretty solid about this offense. And then when you include Starling Marte, then they have that potential to be an average offense. And then if Jorge Alfaro is that guy that was in 2019, then you can dream about a good offense. But it's still a lot of ifs, and you need everybody to stay healthy for sure. But yeah, that inconsistency has been kind of maddening so far. And that's why I understand people getting excited that the team is close to full strength right now, but still a lot to prove. They're not particularly convinced at this time that it's a great all-around team from what we've seen so far.
No, definitely. But Marte, you talk about consistency. There's nobody more consistent in this offense than Starling Marte.
Mm-hmm.
So, with him, that's the biggest addition. When we can talk about how Alfaro can provide just below average, maybe average offense. When you bring Marte back into the lineup, that's when you'll really feel a huge impact being made in this lineup, because what he's going to provide, and he's going to be consistent, not just consistent, but really good. And so that's going to be huge. But I gotta run. I'm gonna go get food before the game starts.
Yeah, enjoy.
Thanks,
Ethan covering his first game at the ballpark this year, and it was great to have him on. But it's great to also have that background noise filtered out because it's a loud atmosphere over there. For people that weren't following that closely this past weekend, not only a series win for the Marlins and that exciting debut of those beautiful red jerseys, but they had their largest crowds of the season. They had more people in the building on Saturday and Sunday than they had on opening day. Finally, it's not yet opened up beyond restrictions. We're still waiting until July, I believe, until the Marlins are actually going to start selling all the tickets to the ballpark. But the atmosphere has really picked up over, and for good reason, because the team is a solid team in the midst of the NL East competition. And even here on a Monday night, we'll see exactly what the crowd size is. But that's a fun atmosphere. Ethan will also be there on Thursday as well. And we'll have people in the ballpark for the series. It's a nice change because they've been playing a lot of road games early on this year. This homestand has been very welcome, and they're about to go on the road again for another 10 games in a row. So it's an important opportunity for the team to take advantage of these next 4 games.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially what this means, not just for the team, but for the standings and for their chances of making the playoffs. I mean, the Marlins win at least 3 out of these 4, you're most likely in first place fighting for that division. If you lose 3 out of the 4, you're at the bottom of this division, most likely thinking about selling. It's kind of like the Mets series, how we said it. This could change this could alter your season completely into 2 different paths.
Now, as Ethan dips out, Alex, you missed him by about 30 seconds that Ethan was on before you hopped on. So now I update the graphic so that we have people following Alex Carver at Fish on the Farm, at Marlins Miners on Twitter, enjoying your off day from minor league action. Have you recorded your podcast yet, or is that coming up later tonight?
No off days. No off days for us right now. Me and Daniel are in the thick of it, Eli. I got the top 100 update coming out tonight. And then we have to try to record. I don't know if Daniel's going to be able to tonight because he can't record till 11, so we may have to do it tomorrow morning. But, yeah, no days off. You know how it is. So, yeah, we're doing good.
Perfect. So we've about 34 minutes until first pitch of the series. We've talked a lot about the catcher situation already. We've talked about the ballpark atmosphere, the rehab updates with Starling Marte, and what else do we want to cover here on the pod? Well, yeah, welcoming the Phillies here for the first of 4 games. I guess we should mention that once again, the Marlins kind of luck out a little bit in that JT Realmuto missed all the last series with this lingering wrist issue, and now he's not even eligible to return until Friday, until after the series is over. So that's a pretty fortunate break, isn't it, Alex? That we saw firsthand what JT did for the Marlins, and he's been pretty good at times with the Phillies against the Marlins, and that kind of like even more so than the Marlins, the drop-off for the Phillies when they lose Realmuto and they dig into their backup catcher situation, that there's that huge drop-off on both sides of the ball, that this is a pretty important absence. He probably more so than anybody else on the Phillies is indispensable to what they do.
Yeah, I mean, look at what you're talking about. You're talking about going from him to Andrew Knapp, and Andrew Knapp is probably a decent baseball player, but very little catchers in the game of baseball are JT Realmuto. And then you have to think about what we talked about last time with, their pitchers throwing to a different guy. So, yeah, for sure. He's a huge part of that team. We know who he is. Marlins definitely look out. I think we'll see him sometime, probably next series, it looks like. But, yeah, lucking out for sure is the right way to put it, Eli. You just want to see how this pitching staff is going to now go up against the team that they just faced. Again, we talk about guys making adjustments and stuff like that, especially against the younger pitchers, Trevor, whoever they start in that, I think, 3rd game of the series. I don't even think they have a starter yet. So we'll see what they do. But yeah, for sure, the Realmuto factor not being there, that's big.
Yeah,
this was
pretty much lucked
go
out,
ahead.
right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, pretty much they lucked out. Realmuto would have been a huge asset for this Phillies team, especially in this series, which means so much for both sides of the ball, for both ball clubs. So it's interesting to see what it would have been like if Realmuto was actually behind that catcher behind the plate. Well, we lucked out. It's in a good way. It's good for us, and in a good way, it's bad because he's injured, and we don't want that for any player. But I mean, we'll see what happens. Andrew Knapp is at most a decent ball player. He's been doing decently for now for the Phillies, so we'll see what happens.
I don't know if you guys mentioned it since you're on the topic of catchers, Eli. I'm sure you probably did, but they activate Alfaro, but Sandy's starting tonight. So I wasn't in the pregame. I didn't really get to ask that question, but that would have been something to ask. I don't know if anybody did. Maybe Ethan did, but he comes off the IL. I guess they're just not comfortable getting him in there right away, maybe?
No, I think they're comfortable. They were not going to have him start all 4 games of the series, right, especially with one of them being a day game after a night game. And that Sandy has worked so well with Trevor Rogers this year. I mean, you look at the splits. I mean, he's worked well with Wallach a couple of times. They worked together. It's all a limited sample, but they've got a great groove between those 2 guys. So if Leon was going to start one game, it would be this one. I mean, Alfaro, he's coming off an off day. He didn't play at all yesterday on Sunday. So he should be ready to go. But I think this is just about handpicking the right time to use Sandy Leon in the series. And yeah, we went into that where Sandy Leon has had his limitations show up definitely this year. I don't want to knock him too much, but aside from the offense, his if you just this didn't really occur to me watching it live, but you dig into the stats on Baseball Prospectus and Baseball Savant, they have him as a really poor pitch framer. They think he's losing a couple of runs already with his pitch framing, even more so than Chad Wallach. So he's not even perfect on the defensive side. There's some holes in this no matter what, but for roster mechanical reasons, as I explained before, it made sense to keep him up and option down Wallach. And as long as Alfaro plays the majority of the games moving forward, no complaints. But they need to give Alfaro a shot, because this was more so than anybody else in this organization. He is the guy entering this year that we point to him and say, this is a make or break year for Alfaro, that he needed to bounce back, put in all that work during the offseason. And we barely got to see exactly what that work turned into because this injury happened so soon. But he is one of the most important players to watch on this team moving forward, because they know how little production they got from their backup catchers, and because of where he is contractually, where they need to offer him a raise next year if they're going to keep him around. And they're not going to do that unless he shows that he is a quality regular catcher. And that is still a very open question as to how much they're going to get from Alfaro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed on Alfaro. I think he's got to show it shortly, right? If he's planning on being here, I guess, past maybe this season, maybe next season. But yeah, I definitely agree. In terms of optioning Wallach, definitely the right move. I think Sandy Leon, his biggest strength is game calling. You hear Cody Poteet say it in every one of his post-game press conferences that he just trusts Sandy. He calls him great. Other pitchers say it as well. So I think that's the edge for Sandy Leon over Chad Wallach. They both can't hit. We know that. But, yeah, I think Wallach was once that guy that was the good framer. I think better than he is now, at least. Better game caller. I think he's taken a step back, and Leon kind of passed him. So, yeah, I think that Leon is the right call over Wallach. And Alfaro, yeah, you want to see what he can do, and you want to see it pretty quickly. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I think this guy, he comes up in pretty much every stream we do, Cody Poteet, both before his starts and after his starts. And he's coming off really excellent performance against the Mets, a shorthanded Mets team. But I guess, yeah, we'll just get your latest feedback, Alex, on Cody Poteet. You teased that updated prospect list. And I'm aware that you have Poteet making a huge jump over where he was entering the season. This was, by some measures, his best start of the year so far, and that 0 walks to go along with the 7 innings that he gave them, 7 efficient innings. I mean, to me, I think I still want to hold off until his next start against Boston before getting too overly excited. But how about you? I mean, where are you with what you think his potential is to stick around even once Eliezer gets back, even once potentially Sixto gets back? I mean, there's a lot to like so far. Do you still have any concerns that you'd like to see him iron out moving forward?
Yeah, it's a huge jump. I mean, we have the list coming out, I promise, later tonight. I know people have asked me that on Twitter and everything about the list. It is coming out. It's been very time-consuming in multiple ways. So, yeah, that's coming. He did make a huge jump on our list, mine and Daniel's list, as you said, Eli. He's up almost 40 spots on the list from where he was previously. What do I want to see from him? Do I have concerns? This is a good question. After his first 2 starts, I would have said yes, because I want to see him use his pitches more. But after yesterday, the leaps and bounds that the changeup has made, and he's always had the curveball, man, I mean, the changeup development was probably the one thing to me to say, okay, he's not going to be a starter. Maybe he's more bullpen. After how he threw that pitch yesterday with that late drop-off, man, that's a testament to the development team. It's been a great course of the last, I guess, couple of years when it comes to them developing pitchers' changeups, which that's always the last pitch that a prospect or any pitcher really gains unless they're ahead of the curve, is the changeup. So they've taken multiple pitchers, including Poteet, and really developed that final pitch changeup and turned them into quality pieces. Trevor Rogers is one of them. Poteet's another one of them. You got more guys coming behind them as well. So do I have any concerns? Consistency would be the only one. Can he be this guy as he gets later into his major league career, as the season wears on? It's 162 games. My only concern is, can he keep it going over the course of 25, 30 starts? Other than that, I think he's fine, man. I think he has 4 really, really good pitches added in the changeup. Good velo on a fastball. We saw that tick up a little this year. So, yeah, man, I think he was already a good prospect. He's now become a solid B-type prospect, bordering on an A-type prospect. So, really like Poteet, really like the work ethic. Solid pitcher, back-end guy. So, yeah, I like him.
Yeah, this is exactly what the Marlins needed right now in the situation they were. They needed a 4 pitcher, and Poteet has just been it. He's been consistently good. A little shaky on the first start, but besides that, he's been good. He was good against the Mets. He had a hit on RBI. This is a guy who I think could stay in the line.
A baby. It was a baby hit. It was, I think, traveled about 2 or 3 feet, but that got the job done for sure.
It did, yeah. This is a guy who I think right now is going to stay in this rotation until Eliezer comes back, Sixto, and then you start making decisions. But as of right now, Poteet's your guy. He's been consistent. I like this guy. He's gonna get the job done for sure for this team.
I mean, it's a good problem to have, but just because you mentioned Eliezer, and we talk, I don't know how often, I'm sure you talk about him often, Eli. I think he's really underrated in this system just because he's a guy who's always had problems staying on the field. So when he comes back, he's been good in his minor league rehab starts. When he comes back, what happens? I mean, right now, I guess we have the 5th spot open, but then you got Edward and Sixto who are coming. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough call with Poteet, but I guess those are good problems to have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely on board with you. I have always cringed at people that suggest trading Eliezer just because he has significant trade value. I wouldn't say he's untouchable. There's a certain scenario where it makes sense, but people thinking that they could trade him for like a major league caliber established hitter, that's not how it works. Like if you trade him, it's going to be for guys that won't immediately contribute to your team. And if you're putting any weight at all at being a competitive team down the stretch this year, then he's going to be essential because so far, I guess you could point to several areas where they've been unlucky health-wise, but you look around the league and the fact that Sandy and Pablo and Trevor had made every single scheduled start so far without a single injury scare, that's kind of fortunate. If those 3 guys get all the way through the year without an injury scare, I think that's unlikely. That'd be amazing. I mean, that's the formula really for this team to overachieve and to sneak into the postseason again. Is if they get those top 3 dogs being consistent and staying completely durable. In all likelihood, at some point, there's going to be an absence of some kind with one of those guys. And then the fact that you have more than 5 like respectable starting pitchers, that's going to be a necessity, not just a luxury. You're going to need all those guys at various points. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we turn back to Trevor, because he's starting tonight. He's been terrific. It's really I'm kind of running out of superlatives for Trevor Rogers. All you can say is that he's one of the better pitchers in baseball right now, and he's certainly the best rookie in baseball to this point in the season. But as Craig Mish reported before the season, as I think anybody else could have figured out, that due to his lack of experience, they're going to be careful with him. They still have, I wouldn't say it's training wheels, but they're going to be cautious with him. Will he be allowed to make 31 starts this year and stick in the rotation the entire year? I probably not, just because they need to keep his long-term focus in mind. He is under club control for another 5 years after this year, and they feel he's going to be a critical piece to them. So they're going to prioritize that over anything else when it comes to him in particular. That's my main message on Trevor, is to enjoy every moment of this while it lasts. To have a sub-2 ERA, to be keeping kind of this team together, and to be, by some measures, having perhaps a rookie season that's on par with like Jose Fernandez. People remember with Jose, he was shut down a little early at the end of his year. That's kind of the dream, is that he has a year like Jose did. And the reality of that is that even with Jose, they kind of pulled the plug on that a few weeks to go, understanding that there are longer term goals in mind. That's what I would urge people to do if you're fortunate enough to be in the ballpark tonight, see Trevor in person, that while he's in this groove, while he is totally synced up with Sandy Leon, that just to appreciate what you're seeing from him, because it's very rare that somebody clicks immediately like this early in their career.
Yeah, this is a guy who just has been lights out. It's been lights out ever since that Cardinals game, which he struggled. He's been lights out. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Right now, if the season ended, this guy would be probably a top 3 Cy Young candidate right now, and for sure the NL Rookie of the Year. So Rogers is gonna, if he keeps it going, man, this is a guy who's gonna be at the third pitch in the rotation. I think he's for sure going to be up there for that third spot in the rotation. And Eliezer goes to 4. Trevor's amazing. He has his best start, in my opinion. His best start against the Phillies. His last start was his best start, in my opinion. So I'm seeing him repeat again this start tonight. You're muted.
A lot of people like to point out that Trevor's middle name is Jadaniel. That's
Yeah.
We need to come up with something very clever with marketing Trevor, because we haven't yet come up with that signature nickname for him or that rallying cry. I mean, if this continues, we'll have to figure something out. I don't think it's going to be his middle name. I think it'll have to be something more creative than that. But he's on this kind of trajectory, man, where he's this special and one of the key guys in this rotation for this year and well beyond. That we need to do everything possible to get the word out about how he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's just keep going. That's the mode you're in right now with Trevor. Just keep going, keep growing. I mean, if he keeps up this kind of production, I don't see why he can't. Awesome. Is there a come down? Possibly. I mean, it's a young pitcher still. He is going to have starts where he struggles. You see it with every pitcher. That's not even a young pitcher. We saw it with Sandy Alcantara. And Sandy Alcantara, yeah, he's still young, but he's established, right? That's what I mean. Not just young, but established. So, yeah, and I definitely agree, Eli. They're probably going to limit him in some capacity. So while he's out there, if you can get to Lone Depot Park or any other field that he's throwing the baseball on, you want to see him because this guy's special right now. Definite rookie of the year potential. Just like Jose. And I again, as Eli said, they probably will do that and limit him to 25, 26, 27 starts. So yeah, while he's out there, go watch him because he's good.
Yeah. K Daniel instead of J Daniel
Yes.
is a nickname. We'll play around with that. But it has some potential for sure. As we're less than 20 minutes until the first pitch of the series. We've already covered the lineup for tonight's game. We should probably mention that aside from Real Muto, Bryce Harper also out tonight. We know that he'd been struggling with a shoulder issue last week, and kind of ever since rejoining the lineup, he's been terrible for the Phillies. He's in a long slump going on, striking out all the time. And in particular, he did face Trevor the last time these teams met, and he was overmatched. I think 3 times that they faced each other in that game. Trevor's really tough he's tough on everybody, but especially on certain lefties from that release point that he can get you at. So with Bryce Harper, I haven't actually followed the Phillies media coverage to see whether or not this is injury related or just to clear his head or to avoid a tough matchup. But it's probably for the best for Bryce Harper. And instead, with the Phillies, just go through the lineup today. It's one interesting development for them has been Odubel Herrera, who was totally exiled really a couple of years ago after domestic violence suspension. And I think the Phillies took a lot of flack for bringing him back into the organization this year, kind of out of necessity, where they just did not have any answer in center field. And kind of by default, even if they didn't believe he had much to give them, that they just needed to try as many options as possible. He's one of their hottest hitters coming into the series. I don't know if people have noticed that, but over the past few weeks, he is OPSing 1,000, if not higher than that, just getting on base constantly, coming up with some clutch hits. That he is kind of back in that 2016, 2017 form for them and kind of understandably hitting near the top of their lineup. From there, it drops off pretty quickly because Rhys Hoskins is having an inconsistent year, Alec Boehm having a terrible year. The bottom of that order is very beatable, I'll say that, between Brad Miller and Andrew Knapp and Ronald Torreyes. So it's a very vulnerable lineup. I mean, it seems like we say this a lot going into Marlins series, that the team they're facing right now is pretty vulnerable. It's not quite the same urgent situation as the Mets. I mean, we looked at that Mets lineup the past few days, and with all due respect, it just did not look like they were prepared to be in major league games due to all their injuries. But with the Phillies, I mean, it does drop off pretty quickly after those top couple, doesn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Harper's in the bench. Our old friend Matt Joyce is in the bench, and then they have a catcher, and then they have Matson. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's a triple A lineup, but it's pretty close if you take out a guy like Rhys Hoskins or Boehm. After that, I would say it's a triple A lineup. When it comes to Odubel Herrera, that guy, I remember watching him back when he was pretty good. Then all of a sudden, he disappeared, and then he's back all of a sudden. And then you have a guy like Andrew McCutcheon who's in the lineup. He's been pretty solid for this team. I'm pretty sure. I mean, this is a team I think we should be able to. If we could sweep, we will sweep. But I'm not seeing that tonight. We'll get to that later in the predictions. But this is just a Phillies lineup who I think Miami has to, especially Trevor, has to just get these strikeouts on. I mean, we saw it in his last start, his best start of the season, in my opinion. Unless this team all of a sudden just surprises us and they just find out the secret formula to how to stop Trevor Rogers. I mean, this team should be a shutout tonight.
I mean, I guess it's kind of ironic because you hear Don Mattingly refer to the NL East as the black and blue division, and you know what he means in that all the teams beat up on each other, right? But I think we're kind of seeing that in the literal sense in terms of how every one of these teams is having injury problems. Of course, you see the Mets and the Phillies, the Marlins have their own problems. So, yeah, I mean, you see these guys that are placeholder guys, and some of them coming in and especially in terms of you want to talk about the Marlins, some of them step up. You saw Poteet do it. So certain guys are going to step up and perform, when their moment comes. It's just who's that guy going to be, right? And where do you find him? So I think that's kind of what the Phillies are going through. The Mets definitely are going through that with what they're going through. And the Marlins, same thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a division-wide thing right now, I would say, in terms of what's going on with injuries. So I guess that just adds to the competitiveness of the NL East, even as already competitive as it was. You got all these star players going down. So I guess it's just going to be who can wade through the fire the best right now. That's who's going to come out on top.
One other lucky break for the Marlins in the series, Aaron Nola pitching yesterday. So he's the only guy in rotation that they won't have to face. Oh, do I have that right? Was it Nola yesterday? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So that's one bullet dodge that you don't have to face a guy that's kind of their established ace. Although at the moment you can make the case that Zach Wheeler might actually be their best arm at the moment. That they do really have a strong top two and maybe even the top three. I mean, Zach Eflin tonight is nobody to overlook. He's had a lot of experience against the Marlins, and I'd say more so than not, they've done a really respectable job against him. But he's an interesting guy. He has only this entire season, he's had only 5 walks, and 2 of those were intentional walks. So only 3 real walks from Zach Eflin this entire season that he's been in the rotation, which means that will definitely affect what you see tonight, where you know that he's going to fill up the strike zone and he's going to be efficient with his pitches. You don't really have to worry about trying to work the count and get him out of the game. You want to do everything possible to just do damage against him. That he's going to throw pitches in the zone. He doesn't have overwhelming stuff in the same way that Wheeler does. As people, yes, as was pointed out, thank you in the comments from Joel that Joel and Nanofish. It was Wheeler yesterday, so they're missing Wheeler, and they are getting Nola. But that's probably even better for the Marlins that they're missing Wheeler at a time when he is so locked in. I remember both those guys pitched this past weekend. It's an interesting Phillies team for sure, where they still have that strong top of the rotation, and almost everything else is kind of in question with them right now at this stage of the year. I guess before heading out of here, I do want to mention a shout out to Anthony Bender. Just continue doing what he's done. He finished off the game last night, not technically a save situation, but pretty close to it. He's now more of 3 weeks into being a major leaguer, and he is not allowed to run. He's been almost perfect to this point. You know that he was my obsession in spring training. I had him circled very early on in the year, and so he didn't make that opening day roster, but as soon as he's been called up, he's been pretty great. This bullpen overall, it's been a great story for this team. I think a lot of credit has to go to the front office and Kim Ng, because that was their priority during the offseason. And after a couple concerns at the very start of the season, they have totally coalesced. All these guys are in the correct roles. Almost all of them throw strikes. And Bender especially is the one that probably gets more swing and miss than everybody else on the staff so far. And his stuff has been as good as advertised. My bold prediction that he would lead this team in saves, I think there's still some hope to that, even though Yimi Garcia has been such a lockdown guy in that position right now. No immediate reason for change. But, I mean, maybe this is the time where you see Bender truly moved into that setup role. Because what do you think about that? We saw the one game that this is the game that they did win on Saturday, but blown save by Anthony Bass in that 8th inning where he walked a couple guys. And, for the most part, Bass has turned things around from where he was at the start of the year. But overall this season, he's just had some inconsistencies. There have been times where he leaves the ball up in the zone and gets hit hard. And there was that game last night where he kind of puts them in a bad position by walking a couple guys. He, of course, that game in New York, that infamous phantom hit by pitch situation, he made a lot of mistakes in that game that set up that loss, even though they got screwed by the umpire. That Bass, for the moment, is kind of locked into this 8th inning role. And how soon do we think, Kevin, how much more does Anthony Bender have to prove before he gets put into those really critical situations instead of Bass?
As you said, it's been only 3 weeks he's been in the major leagues. We haven't seen him too much. I think we've only seen him maybe 3 or 4 times. Bass, we know he's a veteran in this league. He's been in this league for a long time. He has had a lot of ups and downs this season. At the start of the season, he was blowing saves. He was the closer at the start of the season. Yimi comes in, just starts dominating at that closer position. He's the setup man. Bass was it was just inconsistency with Anthony Bass. I think we just could see a couple, maybe one more good setup shutout from Anthony Bender, maybe another save, and I could see him possibly entering that closer role and see kind of Yimi back in his older role of the setup man, or maybe it could just swap around. Honestly, just how we saw it last year.
Well, that's a little bolder than I was thinking. The first step is getting him in. First step getting into that setup role, and then eventually maybe in a closer role if Yimi for whatever reason goes into a slump. But yeah, same thing from you, Alex. What more do we need to see from Bender before putting him in those super high leverage situations?
Yeah, dude, the guy's nasty. I know you love him, but everything moves. That way the fastball moves is like that's something that you rarely see, is a fastball that moves basically like a changeup, and he's hitting like 94, 95 with it. So crazy. Really, really, really good stuff to him. A guy, I'll give you one more sneak peek just because it's your guy, Eli. Not ranked on mine and Daniel's top 100 going into the season, and he's now in the top 30. So before spring training. Okay, just put it like that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it wasn't ranked and now is in the top 30, and for good reason. I think I kind of agree with you, Eli. I think it would take probably, and this could happen at any time, because we talked about this on your last show, that Bass, even though he had that pretty good scoreless streak, probably wasn't throwing the best. Maybe got a little lucky at times too. Has since been a little bit better, I think, his last couple outings, but I think that could probably turn off at any time. If he's missing spots, if he struggles 1 or 2 more times, I think you could see Bender, as long as Bender keeps blowing the ball by guys, which he seems to be doing pretty well. I think you could see Bender in the setup role pretty quickly. Closer, I think it would take Gimme really having a bad time for Bender to see the closer's role this year. But a guy that came out of nowhere, and we're talking about putting him in the setup role, I mean, can't ask for more. So yeah, great find by the Marlins, getting him out of Indy Ball or wherever they got him from. This guy you never heard of, came to spring training, did well, is doing even better now. Just really good. Credit to the Marlins organization for finding him. So good stuff.
Unfortunately, we have seen from this, not unfortunately, but realistically, this front office, even though they've done good jobs finding these unheralded relievers, they've also been very willing to deal these relievers when it's the appropriate time to do so. So Anthony Bender, by starting him off in the minors for a few weeks and calling him up, under club control through 2027 at the very least. But it's really hard for any reliever to stick with one team for 7 years. So I don't know if he'll be here that entire time. There'll be some slumps inevitably. He's going to allow a run at some point, I imagine, with all due respect for his ability. It's not going to be perfect. Might not be here forever, but certainly for this season, he's been such a godsend to what they're doing to really tie together this bullpen. As we're closing in on first pitch, we'll get to those predictions for this series, a 4-game series. I reminded you, Kevin, right before we went on, 4 games, not 3 games. So adjust accordingly what we think is going to happen this Monday through Thursday at Lone Depot Park. Isaac Azut, who was with us the past couple of streams, not available this time, so he sent me his predictions ahead of time. That's how serious he takes this. Made sure to get them into me. He thinks that we're going to see a win tonight behind Trevor Rogers, a win by a lot tomorrow on Tuesday, a close loss on Wednesday, with the Marlins still unsure exactly what they'll do in their starter role for that game, and then come back and win the series on Thursday for 3 out of 4 against the Phillies. That would put the Marlins at 500, finish going on this road trip for the first time in a little bit, reaching that 500 mark. And I think a lot of people would take that. But Kevin, where do you fall on your prediction for this?
Yeah, really quickly on the dealing relievers, we aren't under Loria, so I don't think we'll be seeing any young stars getting dealt. And when it comes to the predictions, I agree with Isaac. I think they'll take 3 out of 4, win the first 2, lose against Nola, and win the final one.
Yeah, I think I could agree on this that they should win 3 of 4 with a bull. That's probably going to be a bullpen game, I'm guessing, unless they call Nick Neidert up, who was on the taxi squad and did miss his throw day. So maybe you see Sean Morimondo get optioned and they bring in Neidert for that game. I think that's a possibility. Whereas Neidert wasn't great in his couple first minor league starts, I should say, not rehab starts. Yeah, so that's kind of why I didn't really like to see him lose a start. That's for another topic. But anyways, he did lose a start. So even if Neidert does start that game, I think the Marlins could lose that game. You got Rogers going tonight. You got Velasquez tomorrow. Marlins do well against him. The question mark is definitely that Wednesday game. And then Thursday, you got Pablo. But I think this could be an interesting spot because the Phillies are throwing one of their top prospects with Spencer Howard. He was pretty bad in his first start, but I think it's a guy who's going to come on pretty quick. So, again, he's in the top 100 league-wide. So I think it's going to be a good game, probably better than most of us consider. So I don't think that one's in the bag. So I think that's going to be a good contest. They at least split. I would like to see them get 3 or 4.
Yeah. I will go overall. I think kind of aligned with that. I'll go with 3 or 4, and the Marlins will win. I think they might lose tonight. I've been so impressed with Trevor Rogers. I do think that he's due for one start at some point where things just aren't clicking perfectly. And this lineup has some depth issues with the Phillies, but they do have some guys that will work very deep count. So even if he doesn't struggle, this might be a game where he's out relatively early. And the lineup that they put together for this game, not putting a huge priority on winning tonight, and the fact that they're Sin Cooper and that they have Leon in there for reasons that I understand why Sandy Leon is in there. But I think Alfaro, I think this is going to be a big testament as to why it's important to have Alfaro back in the lineup because of the impact that he can make when he really gets a good swing on the ball. I think they'll win 3 out of 4, but I think they could surprise some people, disappoint some people, and lose tonight, and then kind of bounce back the rest of the way. And I guess because John decided to submit his predictions, we'll put those up there as well. Thank you, John, for sticking around most of this podcast, most of this stream. Win tonight. Win tomorrow. Phillies 3 out of 4 aligned with us, and I think all things considered, that'd be a good outcome for the series. Just take one series after another. The Marlins have won 6 of their last 7 series against the Phillies, so to make it 7 out of 8, I think that would be a stretch. I'll have to look it up. I don't know if they've ever done that in like the history of this rivalry to win 7 out of 8 series over a course of a couple of years. This is pretty fun. It's fun because the Phillies are so invested in this season. The fans are very invested in this year. They have this playoff drought that's come back 10 years. They're going to be very frustrated even under these conditions if the Marlins take that series. But I'm looking forward to seeing reaction to that. You have a final thing to say, Kevin, before we get out of here?
No, I mean, Marlins just have to get hits. I mean, if they played the way they did against the Phillies the first time they played them this season, we should be good. I mean, again, this is a series that could alter the full season. This could go 2 ways. And I mean, especially when you look at it as with the trade deadline, this could make them sell players, or you can make them buy in and try to win, at least get in the playoffs.
And we'll close it out right there with Kevin Barral, Alex Carver. Check out Fish on the Farm and the upcoming Swing Upstream episode as well. That they'll be doing pretty much every week when family time permits for Daniel to record with you. And I'm Eli Sussman. You can find all our stuff on Fish Stripes. Hopefully you already follow us on Twitter at Fish Stripes, and make sure to follow us each individually right here, Kevin and Alex and myself. So as always, go fish, enjoy the series.